Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and universes of our favorite video games. My name's Connor, and I'd like to introduce you to a bonus episode. Today we'll be picking up where we left off previously in our discussion with special guest The Motherlode. Previously on that episode, we had been discussing the unified timeline between the classic Doom games and the contemporary entries into the series, including Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. We were piecing together the history and lore that connected the original Doom Marine from way back in the 90s to the Doom Slayer we all know and love today. We also started to get into some of the other connections to previous id Software franchises such as Wolfenstein and Commander Keen. So without further ado, here is that discussion. Thanks for listening.
Before we go any further, this is a good point to tie in. There's a recent film. We've all seen the Doom movie with The Rock, and if you haven't, I highly recommend you do.
It.
It's
yes.
Garbage in the best way. But then they recently came out with this. It's hard to even call it a movie because it's dog shit. But it's Doom Annihilation.
I've heard of it. Yeah,
I've seen it, and I will say, I think Civi tried to do a video on it. Maybe I haven't seen it public yet, but hopefully that comes out. Civi11 on YouTube. Great reviewer.
Love that channel.
All things.
He's awesome. Yeah.
And Doom Annihilation seems to very loosely tell the story of Doomguy's unit, who were called in to, deal with the issue on Phobos in Doom 1. And while it's a garbage movie, really, truly awful film with the crappiest, 2006 era sci-fi CGI known to man, that is actually a pretty fun story. The story of the film stands. I do appreciate that, and I think it's good for anyone who's really, if you're really interested in the lore, to explore that film and try to make your own idea of how that ties in.
That's actually a really good point because, another thing I remember from the original Doom games manual, you are, when it's explaining who you are, you are a Marine on Phobos, and you hear through the radio your squad mates are inside the facility of the Phobos teleportation network or whatever, and you hear them getting torn to pieces and killed, and you're the last one. So that's really cool. It's you can sort of see that play out on the big screen with terrible special effects, but still, it's pretty neat.
Well, if you actually pay attention to the film, there's some really interesting parts where there's a doctor on the ship who's dead, Dr. Blazkowicz. Correct me if I'm wrong, or it may have been Sergeant. There's a dead guy on the ship. Forget what I said earlier. There's a dead guy on the ship. They pick up his ID card, something Blazkowicz. Is that related? I don't know, but a nice little Easter egg. There's also someone named Carmack on the ship who's found dead. And I do appreciate this is something that's been true all the way through the Doom franchise, from seeing Commander Keen's dead bodies laying around. That's become a huge meme in the modding scene too. This is something that you really see a lot in the Doom community. I can't express that enough. The community is the basis for this story.
Right.
And you see that repeated over and over and over again. So while I can't iterate enough that this is a really shitty film, but it is a fan service, and I think that people could, if you like bad movies, if you like Chud or any of the crazy crappy sci-fi movies of olden times, then you'll probably enjoy it, or at least find something useful in it for your understanding of the Doom lore.
Remember the names Blazkowicz and Commander Keen. We'll get into them in a second, but really quick, Bruce, as one of the newer initiates to the Doom world, do you have any questions or lingering thoughts now that we've sort of broken down the history for you? Are you overwhelmed? Does it make sense now? What do you think?
This is the best part of the show.
So, like I said, I tried to do my own research, but at least when I was first going through 2016 Doom, and then of course I really love Doom Eternal and a lot of the interactions that I saw with the Slayer and regular people, and I saw this kind of piece about him. So I wanted to know, I know he's got a lot of pent up issues, but it looks like there's some is he benevolent in any way? Is he going like it seems that he's got his own life in the Doom Fortress, but like I don't know, I just kind of feels like he feel the sadness of the loss of life on Earth, or is he just so filled with rage that he does not feel that? Has that ever been like?
I think that ties into what we were talking about earlier with Doom 2, specifically, his revisiting of his home, his own neighborhood, the downtown level, which is infamously shit. And if you actually play Brutal Doom, which was Sergeant Mark IV's basically remake of Doom 2 specifically, you get to explore that a little bit more in detail, and it's really fun. I think from your perspective of like, does Doomguy harken back to some human element of himself? Connor brought this up a lot, where it's like, is he suffering from like some crazy PTSD? I think that's pretty obvious given the scene that we got in Doom Eternal, where he's like repeating like just disgusting phrases and like seems basically insane, and then is then kind of reborn. But from that perspective, I think that yes, we get to see a lot more of that. I have my own issues with Doom Eternal's portrayal of it, but whatever. He does seriously have a connection, from what we can tell, to his old life on Earth or to humanity, because humanity's largely been wiped out by the demons at this point, and he's one of the few surviving members that are like kind of holding this coalition of, if you want to tie it into like Star Wars, like there's the rebels who are trying to keep their form of government, their way of life alive,
right,
against the invasion of hell.
Benevolence is such an interesting thing to think about in relation to Doomguy, because it's like what he does is not very friendly, especially if you're a demon. He's not friendly at all, but there is some sort of weird benevolence about his goals, it seems like, because like we discussed in our previous episode, his goal was to save Earth at any cost, literally any cost, even if that meant kind of dooming Urdak. And there's these connections that he holds on to from his old life. We see like these artifacts in the Fortress of Doom, where he, keeps records and photographs and albums, and he does seem to have some appreciation for where he's been, but he's been through so much that it's kind of like his life is so different now, that he has such different priorities, that it's hard for a human being like you or I to really relate to him or see what's going on in his head. There was one thing I did want to bring up earlier. When we see in Doom 2016 that the sort of history of hell includes all these boogeyman stories about the Slayer, it makes me think of like, exactly how long was he in hell between Doom 64 and the 2016 reboot? And does time even apply?
I can tie this in a little bit more as we go on, but I think that Doomguy is not just one person. I think that he's been like a reincarnated sort of entity, if that makes sense, over time. So we see windows into the Doomguy, right? Like the guy that we've been following throughout the story, but it appears, as you said, that this spans multiple universes and multiple time periods.
So each timeline or each time universe could have its own Doomguy?
Well, we tie that in with the Night Sentinel idea. Like, are they other Doom guys, or what? Is this a group of people throughout time who have kind of inherited the same responsibility? And id Software does a great job of, maybe not intentionally, but recreating the same archetype over and over again.
That's true. We do see that kind of repeat itself in other properties. That's the last thing I wanted to get into here briefly is just this idea that there has always been a Doomguy, and there always will be a Doomguy in one form or another. It's kind of like maybe doesn't always wear the same face or go by the same name, but there's always someone like him in every universe. Because we see clues. You mentioned in Doom Annihilation, the dog shit movie you talked about earlier, there's references to people named Blazkowicz, and in 2016 in Eternal you can find the remains of Commander Keen. Now those are obviously characters from the Wolfenstein games, which are also, are those both also id Software games? I think so, right?
Yeah, so Wolfenstein was essentially the first real first-person shooter, and that you inhabit a person, and that was id Software. as was before that. Commander Keen was a platformer, a 2D platformer in the vein of, Jazz Jackrabbit and things like that. Published, I believe, by Apogee, if I'm not totally wrong here, but the same team, Carmack and Romero were working on that. And to get even weirder on you, like that was originally their attempt to create Mario.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it became Dangerous Dave's Adventures in Copyright Infringement or whatever, which became yeah. And then this became Commander Keen, who's like an 8-year-old super genius boy who gets sent picked up and gone to another universe to fight aliens and all this kind of thing. And does that really tie into the story? I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. There's even coming back to this whole thing about this story and this lore being built by the fans. There is this fan theory that the Slayer that we play as in 16 and Eternal is actually a descendant of B.J. Blazkowicz, who was the hero of Castle Wolfenstein, and Commander Keen, who's, I think, behind the scenes known as William J. Blazkowicz II. So it's like there's this family, this Blazkowicz family lineage of being a superpowered uber soldier, basically.
Yeah. So it is a few years ago, I want to say like 2018 or whatever, but there's always been this question of Commander Keen's, his place in the story. And John Romero made a tweet basically revealing that, we intended Billy, short for William, to be William J. Blazkowicz II.
That's cool. So many little Easter eggs there.
I actually doubt they intended that.
They say they intended it.
What a fun little thing we could throw in there to like mess these jokers that are going to do podcasts about lore and all that. We'll fuck with them and make them go on a 30-minute tangent. But
looks on their faces.
Yeah.
We're gonna get inside those nerds' heads. God, get a life. Shut up. Well, that about wraps it up. I want to thank the Motherlode of the In the Keep podcast for taking the time to join us here on Lore Party, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at lore_party. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.